What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I like to talk a little bit about the idea of contemplating the good, contemplating perfection, contemplating love, how that's important, why that's important, and how you can use this to impress your subconscious mind to experience more desirable manifestations without you having to use willpower or try to force it or spin the present moment, just really trying to like make it happen. So much of that kind of mindset of like trying to force something through is really counterproductive, because in a lot of ways we have spent the present moment in doing that, contemplating our fear, contemplating the undesirable, contemplating what we don't like or don't want, or any of that kind of drama. It's important to realize that creation is finished, and everything that we can imagine is a possibility in the quantum realm, in the dream world that we find ourselves in. And the more that we take ownership of what we're focusing our attention on, the more of an impact that will have in the reflection of consciousness. And for those that are new to metaphysics, what I'm talking about is looking at everything as being a reflection of consciousness. Everything going on in your life, your marriage, your income level, your career, your health, your family, all of these areas of life that we're given to steward is all a gigantic reflection of our own beliefs, assumptions, and identity ultimately. And to really make a change in your life, it starts with a change of mind. And so as you make those changes in mind, well then creation will mirror that back to you. And so really it's about taking ownership of the reflection that we're experiencing throughout the day. Some of the things going on in our life is an awesome reflection. It's like, oh man, I'm really killing it when it comes to my business, or my health is really on point. But then there's some glaring other thing that's just a fucking shit show in our life. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we start to kind of go within, see what we're thinking, what we're believing. A lot of times there's maybe a negative correspondence in our beliefs and assumptions that's then mirrored in maybe a person or a life situation or circumstance. And by changing our attitude of mind, changing how we impress awareness or the subconscious mind with our thoughts about a thing, we can then kind of work in reverse order, change our thoughts in more of a harmony of what does God say about this? God loves this person. Why am I attacking them? That's a really excellent way to start letting go of a lot of anger towards another. Is we have to replace the dominant idea in our subconscious, which comes to the surface of awareness when triggered by an external event. So if it's that person, you can even think about somebody that's been irritating, maybe for years they're fucking irritating. Well, just even thinking about them, boom, there's a little narrative that just hits your consciousness, which also, once you become more actively practicing mindfulness and awareness and being still and present, watching your thoughts as they come into the surface of your awareness, well, you become more in a harmony with the observer of the thoughts, the subconscious, than the thoughts themselves, which is part of the conscious mind, but you are not the thoughts, you're the observer ultimately. And you can start to become more and more in harmony with the observer, which then gets you in alignment with like the field. If you think of it like water and thoughts being like a pebble, that every time you have a thought, it like goes into the water and makes a ripple. The same thing happens to the field of awareness that is always listening and always externalizing in a divine way your dominant beliefs and assumptions. And in changing your beliefs and assumptions, that's how you can start to really test this, because you will see a change in correspondence. And this is something you can test for yourself. I encourage you to. And it's not surprising too when you try to really put this on for the first time, where you go from a state of being cursed, which is what we start off in the world, in the matrix. We start with a cursed mindset, like an automaton that's getting programmed by the outside. The external is programming. But when it comes to being mindful, present, being who you are in Christ, it's really about listening more and more to the teacher within you and applying that more and more so, focusing on the good, the true, and the beautiful, which will then draw that to you the more that you put it on in consciousness. The more that you realize that you're not separate from these events, from the people, from everything going on in creation. Look at it like a gigantic dream. It's all one thing. It's all consciousness being externalized. And so you can either use this, which you are already using this, as either a blessing or a curse. It doesn't matter. It's non-selective and will give you your dominant beliefs and assumptions. That's why you don't have to worry about like evil people getting their karma, because they're already reaping and sowing it anyway. They're already in a state of suffering. You can look at everything as being either a mirror of love or something that needs love. And so you can start to like kind of look at the undesirable people and people that are just being fucking shitheads or whatever, and you could want to attack them and just like destroy them. But in doing so, they are ultimately just reflecting something going on within your own consciousness that needs healed. And so moving into more of a contemplating of like, how does God, do things? What does God think about? If God is love and God is perfect, it's like I'm sitting here spinning my wheels and like hating this person. Meanwhile, the reality is that God loves that person. And so, and the reality is the things that are true of God are also true of you because you're connected in consciousness. And so if there is love for that person that God has, you can connect with that love energy just by choosing to and starting to contemplate more and more of that kind of ideal. And the more that you do that, the more, for one, you stop this cycle of reactivity and doubling down and creating more and more undesirable shit, because, it works both ways. It doesn't matter. You can have unconscious mental patterns that are going off and awareness is hearing it and externalizing that onto the screen of space as a curse, which causes suffering. Or you can align with what does God say is real, what does God say is happening in the kingdom of God, for example. Part of like the teachings of Jesus has to do with like seeking the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, his righteousness, whatever, and in doing so, all these other things start to become added, because everything has been an externalization of your consciousness. Money being an excellent example of that, where it's just like you can have like beliefs in abundance and prosperity that are like spiritual, and looking at things as like symbolic, as a spiritual root. It's like your money, your abundance is reflective of your relationship with God. If you believe God is a source for your abundance, well, God is within you. Your connection to God is within you. And the more that you connect with that promise of God being true, and just taking it on faith, the more that you'll be rewarded openly with a demonstration of just more abundance. And once you realize that it's not the outer thing that creates these inner sensations, but it's the inner sensation, and living in the end, really embodying the fact that, hey, in the here and now, in the only time that's real, in the eternal now, I am blessed and everything's perfectly happening, unfolding perfectly for a divine reason. And part of that reason is to cast out the fears that are fears and limiting beliefs and these slave mindsets that are just then infecting awareness and then projecting onto the screen of space more limitations, more hell, more disorder, more dysfunction, more drama and chaos. When you start to let go of those beliefs, renew your mind with what God said is true by contemplating heaven, by contemplating the divine, by living in the end is, heaven is here and now. So you're not separate from God. God is in control of literally everything. You are blessed. You are healed. You are abundant. You are beautiful. You're a masterpiece. All these things are biblical truths that that you can experience just by faith, by just believing it, by really making your will and God's will one, in the sense that we have a bank house of beliefs and assumptions that are just in our subconscious mind. And you start to unpack those by being a steward of what you have. By steward, I mean looking at everything that's already manifested, because this is not new. You've already been doing this. Either cursing yourself unconsciously, meaning you don't realize what you're doing. You don't realize that every time I say to myself, I'm such a fucking loser, or I'm unattractive, or that person hates me, or that person just has weird energy towards me, or you make up some fucked up story. Well, awareness hears that. God hears every single thing that you're saying, and automatically, like electricity, projects it onto the screen of space, which, can cause you to double down in fear. and experience more and more levels of hell in the present moment. This is not in 50 linear years. Then all of a sudden you die and go to some magical place. The magical place is in the here and now. It's a dream. You're always in a magical place. You just don't recognize it or realize what's going on, because your distorted perception is based on these illusions that you're separate from everything. There's all these little mental stories about, oh well, this is a Sharpie, and this is a Snickers bar, and this is I don't know, something for an air compressor, and there's just all this is for cutting guitar strings. There's all these different little stories. Not to say there's anything necessarily bad about like having little stories about everything if they're positive and they're bringing joy and more and more of living in the end of like, I am in heaven right here, right now. I don't need to think in terms of hell anymore, which is what we were doing. Every negative situation, all these negative expectancies, expecting drama, expecting something to get worse, expecting to never heal, expecting to be limited, expecting death and decay, all of this bullshit. It's like if you really understood how important your thoughts are, and how that relationship with this subconscious awareness or whatever, this divine principle, how that has this correspondence in the events of your life, you wouldn't be thinking this way, for one, and you wouldn't be thinking in terms of being separate from all these quote unquote desires, because you are whole and complete, and that desires is already something you can experience by putting on the energy of it now. You are already in heaven. You're already in that state of abundance. If you're constantly in the present moment going, oh, I'm so scarce. Oh, I am scarce. I am scarce. I am scarce. And this and this and that. And you believe that, because your evidences of your senses show you that you're in scarcity or whatever. And you believe it more and more. That everything functions off faith, what you believe. And all those beliefs are is just thoughts and emotions. Many times, people get tied up in the emotions of fear, and unconsciously, because of that, the heart and mind are one. The thought and the belief energy is one. And as soon as that happens, then it's like naturally and organically, in a way that your logical mind will be like, oh well, yeah, obviously this happened. It'll happen, and then you will believe even more in limitations and chaos and drama and death and decay, all of these kinds of limiting beliefs, when the reality is that all of those things can be transmuted into love by, for one, if you're spending the present moment drifting into cycles of fear or focusing your attention on what you don't want instead of what you do want. What you do want is just God in heaven, and things to be harmonious and joyful and happy and loving, and all of these things that are just what you were created to experience anyway. It's in the contemplating perfection, realizing you don't need to worry about how it's going to happen. The subconscious is able to do all these amazing things without your focus or attention. It's like you're blinking, you're digesting, your blood's just pumping, being oxygenated, you have a body temperature that's being maintained, balance is being maintained, you have all of these skin cells just replicating, dying, shedding, being born, your hair's just growing. You have all of this shit just happening simultaneously with a mind that is within you that is just calculating all these things, doing all these things without your help, doesn't need you to figure it out. The same is true with how your day unfolds. And the more that you contemplate perfection, contemplate harmony, contemplate the good, contemplate the things that are already inherently working correctly, the more you become rewarded by what your dominant attention is being put on. If your attention is being put on divine things are going to start becoming more and more what you're experiencing in your life, almost to a point like you're living in a brand new world, where the old programming from the Matrix just seems like stupid offers, which is all anything ever is an offer to your subconscious, to awareness, to either become one with or not. Unfortunately for most people, they become one with what they fear. Oh, did you hear about what's going on overseas in the war? And did you hear what the banks are doing? And did you hear the COVID and the hysteria and this and that? Oh, did you hear, Mike, that now the fungal thing is going on and trains are coming off the rails and it's hell everywhere? And it's like, I don't let that shit penetrate my subconscious mind because I don't fucking care about it, for one. For two, I know every possible thing exists right here, right now, in like a multiverse. Every option exists, and you can experience anything, good and bad, if you choose. Then, and part of like the choice that exists in free will is the choice to choose. Part of the unconscious state is you're always just choosing fear and believing that's real, and it's a downward spiral in that belief system. You can go ahead and do that, but it just causes suffering because you are looking at things through a lens of there's a separate power that's challenging God, and part of that error is easily corrected when you start to contemplate the oneness of our Creator, how God's in everything and everybody. There's no accident or coincidence. Things are unfolding because of a divine reason. It might suck, it's not to say there's not, some bullshit that you can't experience. Of course there's bullshit, because you can curse yourself just as well as you bless yourself. Oh, Mike, no, I deserve to suffer, and it's challenging my resolve, and it's a benefit for me. I love to suffer, and I love being on the cross, crucifying myself. And it's like, okay, then do it. I don't give a fuck what you do. Suffer fucking endlessly. I hope you suffer like you've never suffered before if you love it so much. Enjoy it. But don't come bring your shit to me and expect me to join the pity party. Not going to happen, and it's like, part of moving forward and, an unfolding perfection, like realizing that creation functions like a delayed mirror, that the less that you believe in time, the less of a delay, the less that you put it on a pedestal, the faster it happens, the more that you realize that with God all things are possible and nothing's impossible for you to do. As you believe these things, that belief, that those thoughts tied with the energy that's associated with them creates, a seed that gets implanted into awareness, which you could look at awareness too, like soil, and those seeds get planted into soil in God's timing. As soon as you let it go, as soon as you plant the seed, put it down, water it, and just be, okay, I don't need to worry about how it's going to sprout or any of that kind of shit, or how a seed even works. It's like you don't need to really think about that. You just got to just put it in the ground, and then God does the rest. It's always unfolding perfectly. Either you're perfectly cursing yourself and that's what you're experiencing. Oh, no fucking way, Mike, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to myself. I want to be blessed. And it's like, well, you're blessed right now. Why aren't you happy? Well, because this person wronged me and my life sucks and this, and it's like, all of these stories that you're telling yourself is what's causing your life to suck. You're doing it to you not knowing. It's you thinking these things, which is then implanting those concepts using your imagination in reverse to give you what you don't want and more things to be reactive to. More time in the present, because you're always doing this in the present moment. The conversation you're having with God, with awareness, with the subconscious. It's like God hears every single thing that you think and then acts on it. It rewards what you're thinking. It rewards what you think about yourself. If you believe that you're an amazing person and people love you, and that the energy of God just is making you an attractive force for good in the world, you will start to see that belief being mirrored out. If you believe that you're like the biggest piece of shit loser, and that women are like making fun of you or whatever, that's what you'll experience. It's like people will come to you based on your thinking towards them. If you think in terms of like what you give to another, you give to yourself, well then it's really about understanding oneness, starting to understand, God only makes perfect things. So why am I sitting here judging? Why am I sitting here? Because, the more that you do this, the more easy it is to let go of a lot of this shit, because you start to realize how counterproductive it is to think about the undesirable, because then it's like, well, why would I plant those seeds when I could just as easily think in terms of like, if I was in heaven right now, there's no sickness. I wouldn't be sick. I wouldn't be in pain. God already said that doesn't exist in heaven. And according to the Bible, heaven is coming to earth. So when does that happen? It's like when you embrace it. When you start to look out into creation and start to see the spirit that is inherent in everything. It's like you can look at your body, for example, and like have all these elaborate stories of like, well, this is my fingernail, and I have joint issues, and I have this issue, and I have all these. Oh, my stomach has it, and it's like giving each individual organ its own identity and its own little story. When the reality is, your body's a reflection of your subconscious relationship. It's like your body is what you believe it to be. It's like if you believe it to be fucking unhealthy and full of pain and everything, and you focus that and you believe that, most of the time we do that unconsciously. We don't want that to happen. But like the more we like have a symptom and then focus our attention on it, it starts to grow. And the more that we believe that it'll never heal, the more it doesn't, because of our faith. It works both ways, for faith in evil or faith in God or faith in love. And the biggest thing with fear in general is a belief in two powers. There's nothing that is opposing God. Literally nothing. It's you're doing it. You're believing things that just aren't true. There is nothing that can separate you from God because you're connected with God. And everything that's true of God is true of you once you believe it. The problem is, people just don't believe it and then experience the opposite because that's what they believe. They believe that they're a worm. They believe that they're worthless. They believe that they are so limited, and they believe all these, they're sickly and whatever. And then just the same, it externalizes into the screen of space, reflects back, and that's the world they live in. Doesn't mean that's reality. It's just relative. It's relative in the fact that you can choose to experience things entirely differently, and ultimately getting out of a lot of these thoughts and these what ifs and these fears, and just getting more into like a steady, I don't know, it's just like water's wet. It's like everything is unfolding perfectly for heaven to be manifested in the day through you, through your attitude, through your essence, through your energy. It's like what you give to another, you give to yourself. And so when you start to contemplate more in terms of oneness, more in terms of like, oh, you're not a victim, you're powerful, and everything going on in your life is because of you and your thinking. There is no accident or coincidence in anything that's happened to you ever. Well, Mike, I was traumatized, I was victimized, I was attacked, I was like almost murdered, I was almost this, I was almost that. And it's like, even the fucking horrible hells of living in unconscious state, all of those are due to your own fears, what you've infected your mind with. That's the thing about like social media. When you realize how powerful your thoughts are, and once you realize everybody is a thought made flesh, an idea in God's mind made manifest, and everybody's embodying a different energy, but we're all connected. Just like thoughts, you have a thought of like being powerful, or you have a thought of being weak. There's a human form that embodies both. One is weak, one is powerful, and you can see it. And when it comes to impressing the subconscious mind, you can be the one that's actively doing it by directing your thoughts, by choosing how you want to experience reality, creation, the dream. Once you realize that you're the dreamer, and that God is connected with you in consciousness, well, how can you be separate? Because there's an illusion that the Jews have, and by Jews I just look at anybody that's a law-abiding citizen that believes God's on the outside. To me, they're a Jew. It's like, no, Mike, Jews are from Israel. No, Mike, Jews are from like the Old Testament. It's like a biblical Jew. What I believe, that the Bible is saying, is just anybody that's like a law because part of like the law, according to like the Jews in the Old Testament, it's not happenstance that we have a system of law and order that mirrors the quote unquote the law of the Bible. It's like, that's not an accident. That's like, okay. And once you realize, so much of like the Jews are looking for this outer sign, this extra, then it starts making a lot more sense. But like, but by that, you can start to, kind of lost my train of thought there, but like, getting back more and more so to what you're choosing to impress your subconscious mind with, like social media, when you realize everybody is like embodying a thought of God's and can influence your own subconscious by accepting their offers. Do you really want to, I've been getting more and more to a point of just like totally rejecting social media because I was actively impressing my own mind, doing it, throughout the day or whatever, experiencing results, experiencing a benefit from doing that, experiencing more and more correspondence, and then it's like, well, I have all these like suggestions of limitations of, oh, you should be, you have all these people idolizing the government, worshiping it, it's like, oh, you hear what's going on with Trump? Do you hear what's going on with DeSantis? Do you hear what's going on with Joe Biden? And it's like, I don't look to the government to save me, for one. For two, I don't put these people on a pedestal as like my king, a ruler, because I'm not a slave, and so only slaves need those kinds of masters to govern their own mental, But like, with that being said, I think I'm gonna balance. I'm getting ready to I got the police called me yesterday because my chickens were getting out, so I got to figure out how they're getting out. For one, I got that one stray chicken that just, I don't know where it came from. It's just like it was in the neighbor's tree. They assumed it was mine. I just took it over and gave it a home. I've never been able to capture it. I've never been able to touch it even. For those that are unfamiliar with like chickens, I mean, they're surprisingly fast, and they're kind of surprisingly hard to catch when they're not, when they want to evade you. I mean, because everything eats chickens. I mean, so they're really, they have an intelligence to them, and they're not super easy to capture, especially the ones that are hysterical and wild, like this one. But the other two that have been getting out, one is, I don't know how it's getting out, so I'm just going to clip its wings, and it's like, oh, Mike, how dare you? But it's like, that doesn't hurt the birds. It's like, I thought it would be like a kind of a gruesome thing for some reason, but it's just like cutting their hair. You just like, they can't feel it, and you just pick them up and you just cut the so they don't fly out. And since I live in town, you have to keep the neighbors somewhat appeased, I guess. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna balance. So just wanted to bring that idea to your guys' awareness, so you can put it into practice. Whenever you're like maybe spinning out with fear, or getting sucked into other people's drama and bullshit, start to contemplate God, start to contemplate heaven, and start to really bring yourself back to the end, which is ultra important, because whatever you ask for, believe that you've received it. And I believe in part of the believing is putting it on in the present moment. It's like, if you really believe that you're wealthy or prosperous, for example, and that God is the source for your abundance and prosperity, there's nothing you can do to draw it to you other than just trust that the subconscious, that God, the awareness or whatever, has ways and means that you don't even know, that are going to be perfectly manifested without causing fear, without causing any types of like drama, in a way that's the least resistance. We can look at our own life, and if you believe that you can win the lottery, or get some inheritance or something, then there isn't resistance in the way that God can bring that to you. But by resistance, it's really you pushing away your own blessing, your own the promises of God. You don't believe them, and you push them away, and you're unconsciously then open yourself up to scarcity and the shit you don't want. And by embracing the promises of God being true, and really like putting that to test, through the law of assumption, by assuming it is already like that, then you impress your subconscious mind with those really empowering beliefs and expectancy of the blessings unfolding in the present moment. You'll see it becomes more in harmony. You get more and more fucking things to be grateful for example. You get more flow in your day. More things start to become obvious in the correspondence. You start thinking in terms of like love and like divinity, I guess, on some level, versus just feeling like a brain and a body that's separate from everything, and a state of like virtual hell in the present moment, fear and suffering and torment and all that kind of shit. You can experience the exact opposite by changing your mental diet And in that, not allowing other people's limiting beliefs to take root in your subconscious. All these people just bitching and hysterical about, oh, the climate, oh, Armageddon, oh, whatever, whatever the new hysteria is. Oh, the banking system's collapsing. Oh, there's a run on the banks. Oh, there's a food shortage. Oh, there's a pandemic. Oh, there's this, there's that. It's like, those are fucking other people's problems. It's like, really, and most of those are illusions and stories of nonsense that aren't even real. Most of the shit that you see on the news is fucking 100% a show. It's fantasy. But, there is no fiction, so you can live in that world. And by doing that, it's really just living with an illusion, living with a perception that doesn't actually exist in reality. Seeing a lens of like, oh, let's see trans shit and fucking LGBT bullshit everywhere, and oh yeah, there's all this woke bullshit, and there's all this, and it's like, then you are in your town or your fucking city or wherever you live, and you're just like, you can walk around with that veil of narrative and story going on in your consciousness, or you can choose to, what's the opposite of that? It's like, oh, all things are connected, nothing is an accident or coincidence. The people that are experiencing that kind of fucking satanic Truman Show are experiencing it because they're believing shit that's not true. And, as a result, experiencing the same power being used as a curse versus as a blessing. And it's non-selective, so it doesn't even care, if you're cursing yourself. Obviously it doesn't, desire to experience, but, it's like the higher, mind, the divine mind that's keeping our heart beating and all that kind of stuff, just wants to experience things. God created everything, so and there, like I said, there's nothing, there's no force opposing it. And it's like, I felt like that, like with my hips, it's like, oh, begging and pleading God to heal me or whatever. And then like being upset because it would, it was like, felt like I was being attacked by, my body having a separate will or whatever. Once you really, really grasp that there is no opposing force, only you and the stories you're impressing into the subconscious mind, that's the only thing that's ever happening in the present moment, is the stories that you're telling the field of awareness, which will then go to work right now to shift reality around like a dream. It's like, the logical mind wants to figure out how it's going to happen, but like the subconscious has an infinite intelligent way. And by infinite, really ponder infinite. What does that mean? It means like unlimited, like space is like infinite. It's like it goes on, and it's like for every thing that's unfolding in the present moment, you can depend on your own little bag of beliefs that most of them were wrong and causing you suffering, and not actually how creation works. You can lean on that understanding, or you can just trust that, just like your heartbeat and your breathing and all these things are just basically magically just happening to you without your conscious willpower or anything. That same healing force is going to bring you to that in a way that you'll be able to logically put it together, because it'll be the path of least resistance. And so anytime you want something big, the resistance is what you're letting go of, because that's what's actually blocking the route. The more that you believe everything is open for God to use, that everything in creation is fluid and malleable, and that there's nothing that's a quote unquote fact set in stone. The more that you open your mind to these empowering beliefs, these all things are possible for God to do, and you can do and have anything. When you really become one with that idea, you won't think in terms of like, oh, I'm a victim. Oh, there's people on pedestals that are doing things to me. That's a slave mindset, and you're not a slave. And so, start contemplating the truths that were promised, in the Bible, for example, and really just put it to the test. Try it, because, you're already doing this. The problem is most people have faith in evil, because that's just how we start. We start with believing that there's all these separate powers and everything. But Jesus made it very clear that, hear, O Israel, our Lord, our God is one. There's not two. There's not two forces. There's nothing opposing God from manifesting it besides your resistance and you pushing it away. God's not going to force these things onto you. You have to be able to accept good things. Oh, Mike, I can always accept good things. Are you fucking stupid? And it's like, if you could, you would, and you would be demonstrating that. By not demonstrating it, you are unconsciously showing that there's something going on within consciousness that you don't want to actually be thinking, but you are, because you feel A, guilty, B, shame, fear, whatever it happens to be, which are all states of consciousness that are like have a root in feeling like God is separate in the sky somewhere with a beard in a courtroom. When that's not how things are, but you learn that through example, but learn that through experience. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. Donation link in the description. I appreciate your attention for this long. Hopefully I was a good steward of it. And until the next now, God bless.